let's talk about your brain on porn. So this is a book by Gary Wilson. It's also a website, yourbrainonporn.com. You can go there. His research and a bunch of other research is showing that high-speed internet porn, opening up multiple tabs of pornography, having the virtual smorgasbord of multiple partners at a click, and you can switch in between in the same session, and it's crazy. So we're in this era of high-speed internet porn, and we're actually finding that that's actually causing structural changes to the brain that are similar to addiction. Yikes. So that's kind of scary. So they've actually done brain scans, according to Gary Wilson and some of the research that he references on his website, that show structural changes and functional changes in the brain of users of high-speed internet porn that mimic and look very similar to that of brains of people with addictions of methamphetamine, heroin, big-time drugs. So what is causing this? What happens is that when we have a nice reward in front of us, naturally as a species we like really tasty food, like chocolate. We like sex. We like novelty, anything new and exciting, a flashy new car. We see it and we want it, and so your brain dumps in dopamine. And that dopamine is a neurochemical or neurotransmitter that tells you, hey, go get it. And it's that drive, like, I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. I'm going to do whatever I can to get that reward. So the dopamine is not the reward molecule itself. They call it like the happy molecule but that's not actually what's providing the reward. It's providing the drive. Later on, it's usually a flood of opiates. Once, if it's a drug, it's a flood of opiates, and sometimes there's some serotonin release, like at the end of a sexual encounter. So, how is this happening? So we have a normal sexual response is going to drop in dopamine, right? Well, now we have this era of high-speed internet porn where we can access multiple partners, virtual partners, all lined up, and we can just rifle through them. And so your brain is just like, whoo, like reward, and you start dumping dopamine after dopamine. So when your brain gets this much dopamine, it's like, oh man, like, we got to get it while it's hot, and it dumps in this chemical or molecule called delta phos-B, and it actually starts changing your brain. It starts rewiring your brain. Scary, right? Your brain, those that wire together. So now all of a sudden, your brain is relating sex, pornography to and it's dumping in a lot of dopamine, and it's creating this pathway in your brain that's just like this one-track mind. So you're actually going to start having addiction-related brain changes. 4 of them that Gary Wilson talks about. One is sensitization, so that's actually becoming sensitized to the stimulus, being exposed to the high-speed internet pornography. Any subtle thing, maybe it's just a little bit of skin, and it's like, oh man, and then your brain dumps in the dopamine, and it's like, gotta have it, and you're in that one-track mind of sex, and you go straight to the porn, you go straight to that thought pattern. Next is desensitization. So this is actually also, as in the case of drugs, since this is related to addiction, you get used to the drug. You gain tolerance. So with desensitization, you get used to the stimulus. You get used to 2 tabs, rifling between 2 tabs of internet pornography, and then maybe you have to have a longer session. You have to have multiple partners, or you have to have just the right, the same things that did it for you before don't do it for you anymore. And now you got to have crazy fetishes and crazy orgies and this and that and craziness just to get that same fix. It just, further and further down the rabbit hole. And so it causes a desensitization because your brain isn't getting what it needs. It's become desensitized, and so things that gave you pleasure before, they really don't do it for anymore. Just regular things in life, like going to the beach and enjoying some sun and some waves, or getting an ice cream with a friend. That doesn't really do much for you anymore, because your whole system has become desensitized, not just in regards to that particular addiction, in this case, high-speed internet porn. So the next one is hypofrontality. Number 3 is hypofrontality. So what is our big distinguishing factors between the rest of the mammals is that we have a part of our brain that actually can override our primal instincts, that instead of saying like, hump that thing, go get it, sex, we can actually say, oh, actually our prefrontal cortex jumps in and says, whoa, let's not do that. That's probably a bad idea because of this, and this. So our prefrontal cortex gives us that executive function. And when we have any form of addiction, whether that's drug, methamphetamine, heroin, and now we're seeing with sex addiction and high-speed internet porn addiction, is that we start eroding that willpower, that ability of our prefrontal cortex to be able to override those functions, and it becomes very difficult to think clearly. And we get any little stimulus, and it's like we want what we're programmed to want, whatever that addiction is. We can't hardly focus on anything else but getting that fix. So hypofrontality. Number 4, dysfunctional stress circuits. So food is a good one to relate this to. Food can be highly addictive. Everyone goes on a sugar binge from now and then. Every now and then, some people, we've had problems with food in the past. And what happens when you're stressed? You go straight to that food. So when we're stressed, we get dysfunctional stress circuits when we have these particular addictions. And once just a little stressor comes, our mind just goes straight to that one-track mind of let's satiate that desire. So yeah, 4 addiction-related brain changes. It's really alarming. The first time I heard this was through a Tim Ferriss podcast, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess that kind of makes sense. It's probably not good for you. But then just recently I dug into the Gary Wilson website, yourbrainonporn.com, and very surprising. You all should check it out and tell me what you think. There's a Psychology Today article that I'll link to that says sex addiction isn't real. And it goes through why. I find that hard to believe. But you can decide and write your comments below. So hopefully this was a good little primer on it. I'll link to some other videos, Gary Wilson's TEDx talk, the Psychology Today paper, and some other ones that will kind of give you a little bit more insight. So yeah, give me a thumbs up if you like this. Give me some comments, some feedback. Always appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time around. All right.